Hey everyone, this is Daniel,
And I'm Jun,
and we are
Korean.
American.
Hey Daniel,
Hey Jun.
how's your weekend?
It was fine. We were in Paju visiting my parents-in-law.
Oh yeah, it was your father-in-law's birthday,
Yes,
was it?
correct. So we were there to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday. 65.
65 and young. 65 years young.
Young, yeah.
Yeah.
And, pseudo American Thanksgiving. Not really. But we're not going to see them for Thanksgiving. So this was kind of our holiday travel.
Wait, your father-in-law is 65?
Yeah.
He's young.
He's young. Yeah.
My dad's turning 70 this year.
My dad's turning 79. He turned 79 in 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh.
So my wife's parents had her young.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's
the
the first.
oldest.
Oh,
so,
I see.
By 8 years. So, I'm the youngest by 7. So it works out.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're 14 years apart.
Wow.
Definitely a generational divide there.
So they are actually young.
Good one.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? Last Friday, I went hiking with some of the 동네 아줌마들.
Yeah.
We went to Cheonggyesan.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I've been there.
It was nice.
Did you get the makgeolli and Jeon afterwards?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the best part.
Funny enough, that restaurant, I think we went to the same one, like right at the bottom of the hike, right?
There are a lot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But we went to the first one that's there.
Okay.
And it's actually owned by one of the people I went hiking with. Her
What?
friend from Shinsa in Seoul, from elementary, middle, and high school.
Interesting.
It was one of her friends that operates that restaurant. So
Did you get 서비스?
we got sobisu.
For our American audience, 서비스, of course, is a Korean pronunciation of the English word service. But it's like when the restaurant owner gives you like freebies and stuff.
Yeah. It's a free
서비스.
thing.
Yeah.
That term definitely does not translate over to American English. But and then the other thing to note is we didn't drink makgeolli, but
You
like
didn't.
Dongbu,
동동주.
Dongdongju.
Yeah.
Okay. And then even one of the Koreans, she was asking them like, what's the difference between Dongdongju and makgeolli?
What? They don't know?
Yeah. So even she was surprised. So I felt okay. Maybe
Yeah.
you could explain the difference.
It's basically, in my understanding, it
Yeah.
comes from the same same liquor. But makgeolli is we call it a takju. Basically, in Korea, you differentiate by whether the alcohol is clear or opaque. This one has it's very milky, right?
Yeah,
the makgeolli.
yeah.
And if you let it still for a while, the sediment goes down the bottom. And the thing that's on top that's relatively clear, we call dongdongju.
Okay. Yeah, that was exactly my understanding from the hand motions and what I heard. I guess my question then, June,
Yeah.
when you buy makgeolli in Korea, the sediment has settled at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So if you just pour carefully without that bottom part, that's also dongdongju technically?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, the food was amazing. It was definitely a matjip.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was...
How's the hiking itself, though?
We didn't do the highest peak. I'm going to go by myself later to do it. But we did one of the easier hikes. It was good. It was about an hour and a half total up and down. So
Did you go with your kids?
no, my wife and I, as we were on the hike, we were lamenting. We wish we could bring our kids, but we have not trained them. They don't have the stamina for it right now.
The foliage would have been amazing.
Yeah, actually, they were all commenting. We thought it might have been too late for the fall leaves and the foliage, but it was perfect. Yeah, that group, older Korean ladies, they go hiking regularly, and so they were even commenting like, "Oh, it's more beautiful than it's ever been." So they could compare it to their previous
So
hikes.
you went in the perfect timing.
단풍? Is that what it's
단풍.
단풍.
Yeah.
I'm always off by like one character here and there, but yeah, that's the Korean word for fall foliage.
Yeah.
And yeah, we won't get into this, but I feel like Koreans do have these rhythms to the year. And seeing the fall leaves it just seems like a thing Koreans do every fall.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know. I never felt that way in America, even though when I was growing up and living in the Four Seasons, there wasn't like something you. Anyway, this idea that
You were living in the Four Seasons.
when I was living in Maryland, where we have all four seasons, and
Yeah.
I'd say everything is very comparable to Korea and Seoul. It wasn't like a thing you do. I mean, you go to the beach in the summer, you go to the mountains in the winter, things like that. But the way that Koreans seem to say, "Oh, we have to go see the fall leaves in the fall,"
Yeah.
it seems to be like at another level compared to kind of the traditions and rhythms you have in America. At least that's my feeling. Yeah.
I think Koreans really cherish the fact and want to take full advantage of the fact that we have 4 distinct seasons.
Yeah.
But also in the US, I think it's a regional thing because when I was living in the New England region, I think like going up to Maine to see the foliage and stuff,
That's
I think
a thing.
it's definitely
Okay,
a thing. Yeah, yeah.
Got it. It was probably just my family. Immigrant families don't have the luxury of having traditions. Yeah.
Anyways,
Cool. How was your weekend, Jun?
I had a fun activity. I went down to Gwangju,
Yeah.
stayed there for 2 nights.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
with a friend of mine.
Yeah.
The only reason that we went to Gwangju is because I just wanted to travel somewhere.
Yeah.
And I realized Gwangju is one of the very few major cities in Korea that I
Yeah.
haven't been to, actually.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So your whole life living in Korea, minus the few years in America, you've never
Yes.
been to Gwangju.
No, I haven't.
And it's kind of close-ish to Daegu, no?
It is close-ish to Daegu,
Yeah.
but I think the road network wasn't very favorable for you to move laterally, if you will, west to east.
Uh-huh.
Now I think they have railroads and
Okay.
new roads and everything.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
I
So
think.
you're saying basically all roads lead to Seoul, right? So there's
Yeah.
well-established infrastructure from getting from Daegu to Seoul, from Gwangju to Seoul, but at least historically not from Daegu to Gwangju.
Oh.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
They were advertising that they built like a new high-speed railway that connects Daegu to Gwangju
Yeah.
at the station. So I think it's relatively a new thing, which is interesting.
What do is Gwangju in? Is it
전라남도.
Jeollanamdo. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, it's my goal to visit at least all the doors once before
yeah.
I leave Korea. I don't even know if I'm halfway there. They're 8, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is Jeju
it?
its own?
Yes.
Okay. I've been to Jeju. I've been to Busan.
Yeah.
I've been to Seoul and Gyeonggi.
경기.
I've been to the East Coast.
강원도.
Gangwon-do.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't been to the 충청도, 2 충청도s, 충청남도, 충청북도.
Okay.
And then the 전라도s.
Yeah. So there's
And then the
Jeollanamdo and Jeollabukdo.
북도, yeah.
Oh, so there's those 4 I haven't been to.
And I think that maybe you haven't been to 경상북도, which is my region.
Oh wait, then there's more than 8, or is Seoul not considered a do?
Seoul's not considered a do.
Okay.
It's 경기도, 강원도, 충청남도, 충청북도, 전라남도, 전라북도, 경상남도, 경상북도, and then if you include 제주도, it's 9 then.
Oh, so Jeju-do.
I don't know why.
Wait.
I also thought there were 8.
Yeah.
Because you call it like 팔도,
Yeah, there are 8.
but there's 9 then.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Jeju maybe it's just bundled into another. 'Cause
Maybe.
the do in Jeju-do means island, right?
It has 2 meanings. Two different Chinese characters.
But those are different characters.
Yeah.
One means island, one means like city or state or whatever.
Region, yeah.
Region, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, there's a word called 팔도 as
Yeah.
meaning like 8 regions.
8 regions.
But
You just named 9.
yeah, so there are 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anyways,
And
Gwangju.
I have a lot of traveling to do, June, before I leave Korea. I want to see all these regions of Korea.
I think just go to Gwangju for the food. I'll just leave
came
it.
back there, yeah.
I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Were the fall leaves still out when you were there?
But I visited a very urban area though,
you
like
did?
city center. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
I just wanted to see what the city was like. Anyways,
Well, I'm probably
the
mistaken.
food was amazing.
Yeah, okay. That's definitely what I want to go for.
Yeah.
What was the best thing you ate?
The best thing I ate, I don't know why, but
Yeah.
Gwangju is very heavily the Japanese style is so in trend in Gwangju.
Okay,
Like
okay.
every 술집 or
Yeah.
restaurant was in Japanese theme.
What do you mean by that? Like very small seating,
Like
kind of boutique?
yeah, izakaya style. Like the food that they sell is also Japanese. Like everything, like the signage and everything was they're trying to be so authentically Japanese.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Like at one restaurant, they even put the menu down, like the price down in Japanese yen.
Yeah. That's
To,
crazy.
yeah, to make it feel more
Yeah,
authentic.
yeah, like you're transporting to Japan.
But so ironically enough, I mean, Gwangju is known for having really good traditional Korean food.
Yeah.
But the best food that I had was in this
Japanese.
izakaya.
Interesting.
I also went to a so-called 식육 식당. It's a format of a 고깃집
Okay.
where it's attached to a butcher.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So they can provide it in a lower price
And super fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to one of them. That was good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Was it Hanu?
I got the pork. It's a pork restaurant. Maybe it was Handon. Anyways,
Is that a thing? Like the Korean pork? Handon?
they try to brand it that
Yeah,
way
yeah, yeah.
recently. It wasn't a thing when I was growing up. They all of a sudden started calling it Handon because the branding of Hanu was so
Yes,
successful.
exactly. Yeah.
They want to mimic that.
Sorry, I just for accuracy, I probably have been to some of the other toes in Korea.
You
but
have.
I just I'm not good at keeping track. There's one place where I don't know, everyone was wearing okay,
Oh, Jeonju.
Jeonju, yeah, hanboks, right?
Yeah.
Jeonju, and they're famous for their bibimbap.
Yes.
Okay, I think I've been there at least. Which do is that in?
I want to say 전라북도.
Okay, one of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, maybe I only have four to go, not five. But June, everything we're talking about in this intro, I think I want to weave them into the discussion later.
You're so good at this.
They're all relevant. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna forget, but in my mind right now, I'm like, oh, they're all connected to these.
Write it down now. Write it down. Because last time when we were recording, you're trying to think of something that you thought of in the beginning of the recording for 10 minutes.
Let me write them down now.
Imagine, like the Elon Musk Neuralink thing.
Yeah.
Imagine you have a chip implemented to your brain so that you never forget things and everything is like in the background, just like
You can just
constantly
search your thoughts.
updating. Yes.
That's what I want, June.
That would be
I'm
amazing.
very much a tech optimist. Can't
Yes.
wait for all that stuff. All right. So, June, we have another news episode.
Yes.
I don't know why I paused there, but yeah, it's time for another news episode.
Yes.
We're going to look at some headlines from October and November.
We're so organized because last time it was September, August and September, right?
Yeah. Every 2 months, June.
Yeah.
And it's kind of awkward because it's like it doesn't align with the even months. We're doing October, November. Next time it's going to be December and January of 24, 25.
Oh, I've never thought of that way.
In my mind, it's like it doesn't even align to the months. It's a little awkward. But this is how we started, and this is where
We
we're
can
at.
naturally just skip a month
We can either skip a month
or
do
bundle three together.
Yeah. But okay, as always, we do these news headline readouts and basically discussions regularly, mostly as an evergreen topic, so we don't have to struggle so much to come up with topics every week to talk about. So doing one of these every 2 months or so, I think helps with that. But also, just because it's very relevant, and I think it always brings up questions for me.
Yes.
I think my news is a very, I primarily read news articles off of Reddit and also my Google News feed. I think it's a pretty interesting blend of Korean news, American news, Korean news from a Western perspective, because I read a lot of, I think, those native English news sources about Korea. So I think from that angle, I'm actually not sure if I'm reading mostly Western news or Korean news, but I think it's a good mix is what I'm saying. And so, yeah, I always have these questions around why is this such a big deal? And then from talking to you offline oftentimes, I learn a lot more. And so I wanted to discuss these on air.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, we had a lot this time. We had to cut down, but I think a lot of them have overlap with each other. Yeah, we'll try to bundle these, in groups that are kind of loosely tied to each other, so we can go cover more articles, but not go super deep into each one individually. So
Yes. Okay. So the first one we want to talk about, which is I think a very heated topic right now in the Korean news,
yeah,
is the Dongduk Yeodae protests and anti-feminist backlash.
okay. So June, for these, so Dongduk is a all women's college.
Yes.
There are many of these, right? Not just one.
Yeah, I think famously there's Ihwayeodae and then Sungmyeongyeodae. So Yeodae means women's college.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Dongduk
Okay. But this is one
I'm
of the,
pretty sure
let's say,
there's
4
more.
or 5 biggest.
Yes.
Okay. So there are many of these, but it's one of the biggest ones. And my understanding is due to dwindling enrollment numbers, they're now considering going away from all women's and just opening it up to all genders.
Yes. To be clear, I don't think the discussion was to completely change the entire school to co-ed, but it was considering certain departments to transition to co-ed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems like that would be hard to navigate, just opening up some departments. But anyway.
They already did for certain majors, I think.
Oh, wait, I didn't know that.
Only for foreign students, though.
Okay. So this college had already opened up some departments to non-women
I think so.
in certain departments.
For foreigners.
But now they're expanding this to Koreans as well, Korean nationals.
That was the agenda. So I think that one of the biggest issues here is that it wasn't ever determined to be that way,
Yeah.
nor it was very seriously discussed. It was just on the agenda for
Discussion.
discussion. And then I think students reacted very harshly, even for the fact that it was on the agenda.
Yeah. Why are you
was
even
one of the points that they're getting backlash from the public. Because like it wasn't even like determined, I think.
see. Yeah. So, okay, let's actually talk about the backlash first and then we can discuss it. So there was this agenda item on the docket for, what was it exactly? Like the school board to discuss, or is it like a town hall meeting where students can come and share their perspectives, or?
I don't know if students were included. And I think that was one of the reasons why students were very upset about it.
But the college administration was having some meeting discussing agenda items, university affairs. And one of them was, okay, should we open up more departments to male students? And then there was a lot of backlash to that from the student population. And then there was backlash to the backlash, which we were saying this anti-feminist backlash, which we'll get into that a bit more, which is, maybe you could talk about that as well before we get into it.
Yes. Where should I start? This is a very sensitive topic to begin with. So
sorry, but what is the backlash first? Was it in news articles? Is it like on campus stuff? I saw some pictures I can't read the Hangul, but there were pictures showing the university, like all sorts of like banners plastered everywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know what exactly is going on, but maybe you could get into that just in more detail.
So I think the main backlash comes from how they operated the protest, which was very violent.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
They sprayed stuff everywhere on, the school's property.
Yeah.
Like they smashed, like they plastered everything onto like one of the founders' statue. And like the way that they conducted it was very violent, was one of the reasons for the backlash.
Got it.
But I think the violence aspect is just a vehicle to express the anti-feminist sentiment of the public, I think. I think a lot of protests in general can become very violent.
Yeah.
But I think because the general public sentiment is very anti-feminist to begin with.
Okay.
And so the violence aspect is just a vehicle for them to criticize the overall protest.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
It's an excuse, I think.
So some of the backlash to the protests are really like keying in and focusing on the violence aspect to it. But what you're saying is there was already a bias to it anyway. And so they're focusing on that as kind of an easy thing to target rather than going after the root of the matter.
I think so.
Okay. I think that's fair. And, my initial response to hearing this, it definitely echoes the BLM movement in the US, the Black Lives Matter movement in a lot of ways. But so the Black Lives Matters protest in the US was definitely kind of triggered by the murder of George Floyd by police. And then it prompted this, wave of protests in almost every major city in the US in response to that. And a lot of the media criticism to it was, there was looting, vandalism, very violent protests. And that was some of I think in a similar way, maybe a lot of news and media focused on that when they already had a bias, let's say, against the movement, rather than focusing on the heart of the issue, which was, hey, someone was unfairly killed by police who are supposed to protect people over, and whether, I don't want to get into too much of his background, but definitely someone should not be murdered when they're being apprehended by police. So, that's my initial response to that. And then, Jun, I think we haven't talked about this word yet in Korea, feminism.
Feminism.
Yeah, because again, I would consider myself a feminist, especially coming from the US. And once I arrived in Korea, I realized the term feminism has kind of a different meaning, I would say, in Korea. At least that's my feeling.
How do you feel differently?
It always feels like feminism in Korea is bundled as a very extreme ideology. And it's more not necessarily for women's rights or equality of the genders. It's kind of an anti-male sentiment here, is my feeling. And, maybe that's not right, but that's at least what I've come to interpret feminism. So I think I would be more cautious or wary of labeling myself as a feminist in Korea, because I think that would, I would get a lot of backlash and hate on that. But I don't know, you tell me.
So I'm not well equipped to talk about feminism to begin with, because
to be clear, we both want to acknowledge, we're men.
We're not very. I'm not very knowledgeable in this area, and I'm pretty sure there's a spectrum of feminist movement and feminism in general in Korea too, from the more, I guess,
moderate.
From the more moderate point of view, like feminist point of view, to the very extreme and what do you call it? Radical feminism, right? So, but what's mostly highlighted in the media is coming from the radical feminism movement, which gets a lot of backlash from the public. So I don't know if a lot of the feminism movement in Korea in general is radical,
I see,
or if it's just more highlighted and pronounced in the media. So I don't know.
So actually, it's exactly what we were just talking about. Possibly,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe some media that has a anti-feminist bias to begin with, they target maybe some of the ideologies or some of the movements that are extreme radical feminism to kind of discredit the entire feminist movement in Korea. Is that true?
So what I'm saying is I don't know whether a large proportion of the feminist movement are radical in Korea, or whether it's just there's just a spectrum and the media is just like highlighted a portion of it. But even for me, because I'm like if you count me as a general public, I see a lot of media that is depicting, or like in the internet, that is depicting the feminist movement to be very radical
overall,
and also like kind of like anti-men kind of sentiment, because like the words that they use, like the hate words that they use is very targeted towards men.
I see.
But that is, I think, there definitely is an aspect of that in Korean feminist movement, I think, but I don't know if that's a whole.
Okay.
But the reason why I think for the Dongduk Yeode incident, people are so reacting against it is because it showed the anti-male part and radical part of the feminist movement there.
I see.
It's very violent, and that the words that they used were very like anti-men. What's a more sophisticated word for anti-men? It says misandry.
Oh, yes. Misandry.
Yeah.
So, Jun, if I were to tell some random Korean stranger, yeah, I'm a feminist.
Yeah.
Would that carry that connotation of me being in favor of this extreme radical feminism? Or would it just be like, oh, he's all for gender equality? And acknowledging like women have historically been maybe pushed down or suppressed and not had equal rights.
I think there's also a very unique perspective towards men who claim that they're feminist.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's rare in Korea, right?
Yeah. To be honest, not coming from my personal point of view, but like generally, if you say that, it's not a good thing.
It's not a good thing. So now you're putting a value assessment on it. I guess I'm curious.
You're not going to get a good perception in general, I think.
Okay. From men and women?
I don't know about women, but for men especially, or like for younger men especially.
Yeah, again, that's really interesting. So yeah, I think then maybe my understanding and feeling of the term feminism and what it entails and carries in Korea was pretty accurate. Because I see in the US, at least, let's say, maybe this is a bit of a wokeism thing, but at least amongst, educated white collar professionals, I think almost most men would claim to be feminist in the sense of, we again acknowledge historically there hasn't been equality, and of course we believe there should be equality across the genders. So I think that's the big difference here, and that's something I picked up on very early. It seems like the term feminism entails a lot of very maybe radical ideologies in Korea that it does not carry in the US. So my understanding of this too is that what sparked this, let's say, rise in feminism in Korea, I believe it was the Me Too protests, right, that started in the US as well, where I believe it was Harvey Weinstein and a bunch of people. Basically, there was a lot of women starting to open up about, previous sexual harassment, sexual assault, things like that, that they felt either too ashamed to or not able to talk about before. And my understanding is this also carried over into Korea. And so there was a huge thing of Me Too in Korea, and that's what has, contributed to this rise in feminism in Korea. And specifically in response to things like the spy cameras and 몰카, right? Is that what it's called? I think was one trigger point in Korea. But anyway, I just wanted to see if that was accurate.
I don't know exactly if there was heavy influence by the Me Too movement. Maybe there was. But I think for a person who was living in Korea, I think the incident that sparked everything was the Gangnam-myeok murder incident. Where this guy in his 30s brutally murdered a 20-something female in like a unisex bathroom in Gangnam-myeok. And I think women took it as like, oh, like women are always being targeted from men and whatever.
We're not safe.
And I feel like that was the thing that triggered everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the big thing for me is, and that's maybe interesting, but also to be aware of, is the, again, association of being supportive of, let's say, Me Too, feminism in general. Yeah, I think it carries very different connotations in the US and in Korea. And I think it's a good bridge to talk about maybe one of the more extreme feminist ideologies in Korea that recently has started to make global news and news in America too.
Yeah.
Which is the 4B movement.
Yeah, the 4B movement.
And again, this was, the articles were stating in response to the US electing Trump for a second term. And Trump being, let's say, I want to be careful here. Trump, one of the major political issues was women's reproductive rights and whether abortion was a federal, I guess, supported law that everyone had access to abortion. And Trump, I believe, his campaign and platform was like, this is a states issue. Let's let the states decide. And in response to that, I think I saw a lot of U.S. headlines post election saying this 4B movement is growing in the U.S. So first, let's define the 4B movement, maybe some of its origins and associations in Korea, and talk about that. So
I don't know when it exactly happened, but it is aligned with the rising feminist movement in Korea. Interestingly enough, the way that it's pronounced is 4B in the alphabet B
Yeah.
is kind of interesting because it's 4B in Korea, but the B is not the B in the alphabet. It's P in Chinese character.
Oh, what?
Yeah, which means like no.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah. So through my research, I learned that the 4B 운동, 4B movement is 비연애, no dating, 비혼, no marriage, 비성, no sex, 비출산, no birth.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's a sort of like a movement that addresses the underprivileged or like the inequality of genders in Korea, and that is like organized in a very patriarchal way. So it's a movement that addresses that and sort of questions that, and women like actively trying to not engage in anything that's related to male, which I think has a little bit of like misandry colors to it.
I mean, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Right? This is a pretty extreme ideology. I guess my questions are, is that the sentiment in Korea too? Like, hey, this is just, some small vocal minority that's very, very far on the extreme spectrum of feminism. And it's not necessarily widespread or widely supported by the public in Korea. And then I think, again, paralleling that to how some of the media coverage has been talking about this as like, a major thing. Because I had heard of 4B before, but again, that's how I had always thought of it as this very niche, far extreme ideology on the feminism spectrum, let's say in Korea. And I just want to make sure that's true. And I guess what the general sentiment and public, reaction is to 4B in Korea.
In my firsthand experience, I've never met any women who are like saying that they're actively involved in this movement or practicing this movement.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure this is an agenda that comes up in the very radical side of the feminist movement. But again, I don't know how big of a proportion is the radical side, radical part of the overall feminist movement. But yeah, again, I've never seen anyone in person who would actively say that I'm practicing this.
Okay. I want to ask a couple follow-ups to that. Have you met anyone who would upfront claim to be a feminist in Korea?
Yeah, I've only met one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So even that I think is a bit uncommon, like either not being vocal about it or not feeling safe to even label yourself as that in Korea, I think is one thing.
Yeah.
The second thing I want to bring up is actually tying this back to the first article, the first headline around the Dongduk Women's College. One of the articles I read was basically a lot of the population's backlash to this being even discussed is that, hey, this is like, this all women's college is maybe the one safe space we have in Korean society for women to gather and just be able to talk freely about women's rights, about the patriarchy and things like that. And, I think what you just said maybe echoes and reinforces that a bit, which is, if you feel like you're a feminist in Korea, you can't bring it up in society without being labeled as like an extreme feminist who believes in all these other things, right? And yeah, that's one of the reasons why they really wanted to keep the college as women's only. So
yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that's one of the reasons why there was such a backlash
to begin with.
Yeah.
Do you feel like I just want to very quickly maybe talk about the history. I don't know if you know, but so in the US, there's also, again, all women's colleges. There's also a category of colleges called HBCU. Have you heard of these before?
No, I haven't.
Historically Black colleges and universities. So yeah, nowadays, most colleges are integrated, but there was a period, and actually by law, you're not allowed to discriminate based on gender or race, especially if you're getting money from the government, federal funding, right? But there was this period of time where, let's say, I don't know the exact civil rights terms, but, slavery was abolished. But then there was this era, maybe I think of just about 100 years, where slavery was illegal, but there was no laws basically giving equal rights to blacks and whites. And so there were a lot of colleges that were not admitting this was a segregation era, I guess, they just wouldn't accept black students. And so then there was this, this void was filled in with colleges that specifically were targeting black population and also at the time women's population. So, it made sense at the time. There wasn't access to higher education for blacks, for women's. And so then they created these colleges specifically targeting those populations to give them equal access to education, right? And if you look at modern America, of course, the populations at these top universities are not necessarily representative of the population, but at least on paper and at least legally, colleges can't discriminate based on race, based on gender. So theoretically, you should have this equal access.
Yeah.
Anyway, I bring this up because that begs the question, like, do we still even need, or should there still even be all women's colleges, all black colleges, etc.? And I just wanted to know if there was a similar history or sentiment in Korea and in the discussions around this women's college too. Because, I think it's a fact that historically women in Korea have not had equal access to things like education, jobs, etc. But Jun, I don't know if we have the exact numbers now, but I'm very confident that there are more women graduates of college than men right now in Korea.
Oh, is it?
And again, women's representation at the workplace in Korea has never been higher. To be clear, there's still major issues. I think Korea is number one in the OECD as far as the gender pay gap. So it's not equal, I want to be clear. But at least in today's world, you look at just college admissions and graduates, there's more women graduates than men graduates. So anyway, I do think this begs the question, like, what are the history and the origins of the all women's colleges? Is there a discussion about whether they're still necessary? I think a lot of the anti-feminist backlash from men in Korea talk about reverse discrimination now, which is like, hey, I can't even go to that college.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's all men's colleges in Korea, etc. But anyway, I just wanted to discuss that.
Okay.
Maybe it's not that interesting, but
Would you say the historically black
colleges and universities, yeah,
HBCU? I think the origins of women's colleges in Korea has a very similar historical background. When back in the days when women were underprivileged in the education sector, where like even in like the 80s, right?
Yeah.
I think it was very not that common that women go to colleges. So in that sense, in a very highly patriarchal, is it patriarchal?
Patriarchal?
Patriarchal
I don't know.
Society.
Yeah.
It was only natural that women were more under in receiving education. And therefore, I think these women colleges were sort of like the aid for that kind of inequality in education for genders, right? So I think that's the historical background that all these women's colleges have started. And there definitely are people who start questioning whether in like modern Korea, if like there aren't a lot of gender inequality issues anymore, why are they discriminating against men where there are certain colleges that only would admit women?
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to, the importance in education in Korea.
Yeah, and the competitive nature of Korea.
Yeah.
I can understand why men would be like, hey, it's not fair.
Yeah.
There's these, class of colleges that are good colleges that I can't even apply to.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and especially it comes to becomes an agenda when it comes to medical school. Because going into medical school is such a competitive thing, and everyone wants to go to medical schools in Korea.
Yeah.
And like, if there are certain women's colleges that have medical schools, why can't I apply there? I've seen and I've heard some people raising that issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a tricky subject. Yeah.
I think if there weren't such a surplus, let's say, of really good colleges and universities in America, these, access to HBCUs and all women's colleges would probably be a bigger issue. But I think because there's such a surplus and abundance, it just doesn't come up as much. But, in Korea, where it's so competitive, I can understand why this is kind of front and center, maybe more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there aren't all male colleges in Korea. I don't think anyone would want to go there.
Yeah.
I think there's something interesting about the nature. I mean, this is very sensitive. It's a sensitive topic. Well, I feel like women in general, they have a more communal aspect to like bond together with the same sex kind of.
Yeah.
Like friendship wise, right? Community wise.
Yeah.
Whereas like men, they don't, I mean, there's like fraternity and stuff.
Yeah.
Which I find kind of weird as a Korean.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
If you were to poll women
yeah.
saying how many of you would like to, or are open to attending an all-women's college versus co-ed,
Yeah.
and poll men the same thing,
Yeah.
no men would want to go to an all-men's college.
Yeah.
Jun, I think, but that probably very specifically calls out maybe the need for this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some environment where it's a safe space for women to gather, talk about whatever's on their mind, feel safe, right? And so in that sense, you could probably also ask, like, anyway, from that perspective, I definitely see I think there's a need to continue having these all women's colleges. Yeah. Just to provide the parallel though, in America, there are all men's colleges. I had to look it up.
There are.
Yeah, there are. I think the all women's colleges people know. Wellesley, Smith, Barnard.
Yeah.
These are very popular and kind of well known to be all women's colleges. But for men's colleges, I had to look them up. But there are some. Morehouse, Wabash, and then Hampton, Sydney.
What?
I have heard of Morehouse.
What's the purpose of these colleges?
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, but there are. I guess what I'm saying is there are some of these still in the U.S. But yeah, I had not known of them. Whereas I had at least heard of the kind of bigger, more well-established all women's colleges. Yeah.
I like the point that you made earlier, where like if it's very difficult for women in general in this society to express their feminist point of views, which if the premise is that there's a wide range of spectrum of the feminist movement.
Yeah.
I don't want to endorse the very radical movement personally because it's very violent, and again it goes hand in hand with misandry, which like all hate is not good, right? But if like in general, if there's like a healthy discussion in the feminist movement, and in Korea, if it's difficult to express that agenda, I am in full support of like these women colleges becoming the vessel to cultivate that kind of discussion. Yeah. Right.
Okay, that was a very long discussion on the first one.
We talked about the 4B movement in relation to the Trump election, but there's another interesting aspect that has nothing to do with 4B or feminist movement, but it's related to the Trump election.
Very nice transition, Jun. Smooth.
Which is the surge in the Bitcoin price.
It's approaching 100K, right?
100K, yeah.
That's crazy.
It's interesting because in Korea, that symbolic number was 1억.
Yes, yeah.
Which they already is surpassed.
Oh, in Korean currency, it has surpassed 100 million won.
Yeah, we surpassed the milestone before you guys.
Broke the barrier.
Yeah. It's been crazy.
That's crazy. Do you hold any coin, Jun?
A little bit. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Trump. Not a lot, a little bit. Yeah.
Jun, this one's funny to me because when I first moved to Korea, all I heard was stock.
Yeah.
What stock do you have? Do you know about stock? What's your investment tip? And, when I'm looking at other people's phones on the subway, maybe, again, I've said I should stop doing this. But all it is like tickers.
Yeah.
I just see tickers everywhere. I don't know if it's necessarily stocks or if it's coins. But yeah, that craze over stock investments, I first heard. And I think that morphed maybe 2-3 years ago into coin.
Yeah.
I heard it everywhere.
Yeah.
Just like as much as I heard MBTI language being floated around, I heard coin is like what coins are you investing?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk briefly about this because definitely, and this was one of the questions that came up in our Discord too. Overall, I would classify Korean society as very risk averse. I would classify Korean companies as risk averse, right? But when it comes to getting rich quick, I would classify Korea as maybe even more extreme or more, let's say, susceptible to these risking it all, borrowing money, investing and trying to get rich. So I want to talk about that contrast a bit. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is maybe some of the reasons behind this. I think the craze over stocks and also coins is because historically in Korea, there hasn't been that much. I'd say the overall financial, let's say, institutions in Korea are underdeveloped compared to America. And so the ways in which you can make a return, make money, grow your wealth in Korea, it really historically has only been in real estate.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what has driven some of this fervor over stocks and coins in Korea.
Yeah.
But anyway, at least, let's talk about that.
I think you framed it very accurately. I think starting from like the late 2000s and the early 2010s, I think Korean public witnessed this surge in real estate price, which I think I mentioned this term 벼락거지, a lot like the FOMO that happened for people who didn't
rich through real estate.
Yeah, didn't own real estate property.
Yeah.
And again, like tying that back to like the importance of fairness in Korea and like how everyone's like pretty much the same. That FOMO, I think, hit harder than people would feel in the States. That also being tied with how technologically advanced Korea is and are willing to adopt new technology.
Yeah.
I think Korea, when like the coin thing became a thing, Korea was one of the pioneers, if not the first in the world, to like have an app that you can trade coins with.
Oh,
coins.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think everything tied together. People were like so crazy about coins at the time, which we all know how it ended.
For some of them, yeah.
Yeah, in the mid 2010s, right? Because it crashed.
Oh, Bitcoin.
Yeah. And everyone sort of like lost hope in that. And then later on now, it's like, yeah, that became all-time high again.
Yeah.
Funny anecdote.
Yeah, Jun. Everyone has a Bitcoin story.
I had some Bitcoin in one of the very early Bitcoin trading platforms in Korea back in 2014-ish.
Wow.
Which was pretty early. And I remember losing a lot and then pulling out of that.
Yeah.
Like pulling everything out from the platform.
Yeah.
But now, because like I see in the news that Bitcoin is all-time high. I was like, did I forget some Bitcoin that I left there?
Yeah.
And I had to like go back into that app, which I haven't logged in for a good 10 years.
Yeah.
In the hopes of maybe I forgot I left something. Interestingly enough, I found like 3,400원.
So you did have some Bitcoin.
It's like $3 worth
Okay.
of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But you know the increase rate, it was 1,400%.
Oh my gosh, Jun. Yeah.
So I left that little like crumble of Bitcoins that I couldn't even pull out.
Yeah.
But that became 3,400원. Isn't that interesting?
That is funny. Yeah. Your pennies became $3.
Yeah.
My Bitcoin story, I have so many, but for the record, I do not own any Bitcoin directly. I own through my otherwise very responsibly diversified portfolio. But I remember one of my wife's sister's friends. He was very young, at least relative to me. This was, I want to say it was many, many years ago. So back when Bitcoin was around $1,000 per coin. And he was like, "Hey, Hyung, like, have you heard of this thing Bitcoin?" And I was like, "Let me tell you, it's a scam. There's no inherent value to it. All these reasons why it doesn't make sense as a currency, etc." And
okay, let's go ahead.
Personally, I just think I maybe take issue with the branding aspect of it. It's not a currency. It's something that it definitely has some store of value and you can make a lot of money off of it. But I take issue with the labeling of it as a currency. For a currency to exist, it should be stable, highly, transferable, etc. Like everything that modern blockchain's doing to make it into a currency. It's like fighting its own inherent origins. Anyway, I don't want to get too deep into it. I told this guy, like, hey, you should not invest in Bitcoin at all. If you're out there, Jay, like, I hopefully you didn't listen to my advice and you held. But yeah, you know, I've had friends who very early on went all in on Bitcoin and, you know, quit their very high paying jobs to get into Bitcoin startups, etc. But anyway, yeah, I do not own any. I mean, I don't have any FOMO either because I still, from a principles perspective, don't necessarily think it's the greatest thing. It burns a ton of electricity and things like that. But anyway, yeah.
But do you now admit that it does have some inherent value?
June, you're trying to trigger me. Its inherent value is in the kind of artificial scarcity of it. And it's in all the electricity used to mine and maintain the whole system. So in a sense, yeah, you're burning a lot of electricity, which costs money to go into maintaining this thing. So from my perspective, it's a store of money from that way. It's like if you took energy to compress carbon to make it into a diamond, yeah, there's some inherent value into that. But I also would say diamonds have very little inherent value too. So it's just this artificial thing that's created.
I think inherent value comes from an agreement, though. Everyone agreeing to the fact that it is valuable.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much it. Because the very first currency came from gold, right?
Yeah.
But does gold have inherent value?
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's just an agreement that everyone made that it is valuable. And I think for some miraculous reason, everyone started believing that this has inherent value. And they agree that it does, then I think it has inherent value.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pass still on it. But I agree with you. I don't think gold necessarily has inherent value either.
Nothing does, actually.
Well, some things do. Rare earth minerals.
For survival?
I mean, the rare earth materials that are used for modern batteries and things like that, that's inherent value. It's super rare. Without them, we can't produce something that we really need the world to run in advance. Anyways, yeah.
So I think if this current trend leads to the entire population agreeing upon that Bitcoin has some value, then it can easily become currency.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Not easily, but
maybe if we just drop the word currency from it, I would be much happier. Yeah. The idea that maybe I'm just out of date and my mind is not malleable, but just knowing the underpinnings of it
But the current currency has its own problems too.
Fair enough.
Which Bitcoin can solve.
Yes, yeah.
And I think it is democratic. There are ways to get around it.
Yeah.
The problem of current currency, which is just controlled by
one government or whatever. Yeah. I agree. This is its own very long, I think a top news headline in America would be the whole BRICS coalition, let's say, trying to go away from the US dollar as kind of the basis for all global trade, which would be very bad for America. And something that most people thought was impossible before, but now is very much a reality of people moving away from the US dollar. Anyway.
One quick side note that has nothing to do with the Bitcoin, but has just interesting fun fact about the Korean stock market is that you know how when the price goes up in the US or in the world in general, you display it in red, and when it goes down, it's blue. I think in Korea, it's the opposite.
It's flipped.
So red is not a good color.
I see. Yeah. I thought you were going to bring up something else, which is, so you've heard of GameStop, right?
Yeah.
And AMC, the movie theater company. So these are called meme stocks in the US. And obviously they were heavily manipulated by the mass market. I think Korea has a bunch of these instances too, where Koreans were they were very strategically trying to manipulate stock prices on the Korean stock market. So anyway, I just think, I can understand why Koreans would be extra into kind of meme stock and stock manipulation. But I wanted to bring up another headline, which is basically I think the Korean stock market was found to be having the lowest performance amongst the stock markets of all the top 20 economies. So the G20 post US election. So basically, Korean stock market is not doing well. And then I think there was another headline I saw, I couldn't find the exact one, so I won't quote it. But it was basically comparing the performance of the Korean stock market versus the US stock market over the last 20 years. And again, it's just, you can't even compare. The Korean stock market just hasn't grown that much, whereas the US stock market's, at all-time highs, etc. And I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is, again, to reinforce the point earlier. Like, the Korean stock market is not seen in Korea as the equivalent of the US stock market is in America. It's like, okay, guaranteed, like over the long run, it's going to go up. It's the best place to invest your money, etc. I don't think the Korean stock market has that reputation for Koreans. And then the second thing I want to bring up is that access to, this was a very recent thing, I think in the last year, it became, I think, a little harder for Koreans to invest in the US stock market. And you have to go through like a Korean broker for that. Mostly, I think, because the Korean government wants to make sure it's getting its fair share in taxes. But I just wanted to bring that up. I think maybe Americans would take it for granted how easy it is to have access to U.S. investment vehicles. That isn't necessarily true overseas. And I think a lot of Americans would be like, why doesn't everyone in the world just invest in our stock market? And I think my answer to that would be, they would if it was easy, but it's not. So
it has become very easy nowadays through certain, I think it became very easy to the point where, as an investor, I don't feel a difference between investing in the US stock market versus in Korea.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's opposite of what I thought.
It's very easy now. But I think going back to your point of how Korean stock market hasn't been doing well compared to the US stock market, I don't think any stock market in the world compared to the US has been this privileged.
Yeah.
Because I think the US stock market, or the United States as a country in general, is one of the few, if not only, stock markets in the world where if they want to make the prices higher, they just can. Whereas like all the other stock markets are very tied to the US stock market. Yeah,
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. You say you don't hold any stocks in the Korean stock market, do you?
I have, a generally diversified and balanced portfolio, of which a portion is international funds and stocks.
Ah, interesting.
So I think Korea is bundled in that.
Yeah.
But nothing, again, specifically in the Korean stock market. Yeah.
I think you are relatively, even as an American, more knowledgeable in like investment in stocks in general.
Yes, I think even on the spectrum of American know-how, I probably am on the higher end. But overall, I think Americans' understanding of financial markets and financial, let's say, literacy, maybe that's not true.
Yeah.
Maybe advanced financial instruments is probably higher than in Korea, just because they are more developed in America. Yeah.
Listeners, if you're listening, please comment in the comment section if you want Daniel to talk more about investment in stocks in general.
No, I would never do that.
We can have a separate episode dedicated to
You're trying to get me sued.
Anyways,
Jun, we already shared my horrible advice on Bitcoin from 10 years ago.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Speaking of real estate, Daniel, do you know what is the number one? You know what's the number one type of living in terms of real estate in Korea?
What's it called in Korean? I know it's apartment, but is it a 아파트?
아파트. Speaking of 아파트.
Yeah, 아파트.
Yeah,
아파트.
That song became an international sensation.
Yes, yeah.
I think I briefly mentioned, or I don't know if we've published this episode yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's like all over social media.
Yeah.
Like if you go on TikTok or like Instagram Reels, it's like one after the other. It's like you hear that song. I don't know if it's my algorithm. But yeah, it's this song performed by Rosé of this famous K-pop girl band called Blackpink. I think most of the members, I think there are 4 members, right, in Blackpink. Most of their members had a separate contract for their international performance with like an American label, right? And I think Rosé made a contract with a label that had Bruno Mars and all these big big superstars in it. And so it was her first act after the contract, which is this song with Bruno Mars. And what's most interesting is that she highly leveraged this very Korean culture and pronunciation into the song, which I think was the most interesting aspect of this song.
For you?
And which also brought this international success.
Yeah. First of all, okay, this is a remake of a older Korean song. Is that right?
No, it's not.
What?
There's
I saw a headline.
there's a song that has a same title, but it's a different song.
Completely.
No,
Okay,
I don't think they even, what do you call it, sample it.
Because I remember, okay, I just saw a headline then. Okay, that's worth clarifying. So I saw a headline saying, the old Korean singer for a song with the same name was thankful for like reviving, I guess,
Just the
interest in this
title,
song.
though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those things when like in the US it's funny. Sometimes when a stock goes up or a company's doing well,
Yeah.
like a stock ticker that has a very similar ticker name
Yeah,
goes up as well
Yeah.
because people don't know the difference.
Yeah.
So this was like that. Okay. So there's actually no relation to that original Korean song with the same title. 아파트.
Not that I know of. I know both songs, but there's completely different songs.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The second thing I wanted to bring up is what you said. 아파트 is I think, Konglish type word.
Yes.
It's the way that Koreans say or speak to apartment, right? 아파트. And I wanted to discuss this whole Konglish, Hangulization of English words with you a bit. Because at least growing up, I think when you pronounce words in this way, it feels a little racist to me. But as a Korean, of course not. This is just how Koreans pronounce these words, right? But how do you feel like with the popularity of this song now? Everyone in the world is now saying this Konglish word that it's not the English word. It's like the Korean interpretation of an English word. I don't know. Does that do anything for you at all? For like, is it cringe? Are you proud of it, or is it just neutral?
I don't think it's cringe.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of languages are reborn that way. Like, for instance, a lot of English words came from Latin. Is this too far-fetched? But there are Americanized words that sound different in British. Is it not?
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know of any examples, but
I think it's a natural thing for languages to evolve in its own way in different cultural contexts. So I don't think every word should be pronounced in its original way, because how can you even define what original is, right?
I don't that last word doesn't register. I'm just trying to think, okay, there's like random French sayings that Americans will put in. C'est la vie, carpe diem, right?
Yeah.
We try to at least maintain the original.
No, you don't.
Pronunciation?
America's the number one country that they would just pronounce it whichever they want.
Okay, that's fair.
Like the way that you pronounce IKEA is just...
I mean, that's how it's spelled. IKEA? IKEA?
No, you have to pronounce it as IKEA
IKEA?
in Swedish. See,
Maybe it's just my English. But no one would say, like, look at the French term, c'est la vie, and pronounce it like c'est la vie. Like, no one would say that. I don't know.
you say Paris.
Instead of Paris?
Yeah.
Okay. Stumped.
Anyways, but I think 아파트 came from Japan, I think.
Oh, really?
The way that they pronounce apartment. They
Okay.
call it apato. Anyways, yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting.
I guess I would say I think after living here 4 years, I feel less like really did we have to? Are we really going to globalize this way that Koreans pronounce English words? I feel less of that now, but I could imagine if I just continued living in the U.S., I would feel a little bit like are we really going to make fun of the way that Koreans pronounce English words? Like, I think that's the contrast of having lived here and now understanding, well, no, this is just how Koreans have chosen to adopt English words and morphed it into their own language.
Yeah.
First, as a Korean or as an American or Korean American living in the US, it always felt like, again, I always hesitated before I, pronounced words in the Korean way. So that Koreans would understand me, right? And I think that's the difference where as a Korean, you probably don't feel like it's racist when people pronounce English words in the way that Koreans would understand with the Korean accent almost. Yeah. versus, it's just how it's spoken and how it's said. And it's very natural and accepted. And it doesn't carry any of that, racial connotation, right, in Korea. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. Second thing here is apparently there's a Korean drinking game associated with this. I don't know if you know or not.
Yeah, that whole verse line of like 아파트 아파트, it comes from the drinking game.
Yeah, could you go into that? Because I don't think I know at all.
So yeah, I think drinking game culture in Korea is it's a unique and interesting aspect of drinking culture in general in Korea, which I haven't seen anywhere in the world.
Oh, so you're saying even the verse and the melody, it's tied to how this would be used as a drinking game?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't know any of this.
Yeah.
Can you please explain?
So the song starts from, I don't know if you know this, but the song starts from saying 채영이가 좋아하는 랜덤 게임. That's how the song starts.
Oh, what's the English translation of that though? Game starts. Oh,
that's
what is it though?
She says game start,
which
Koreans might do, but she starts with 채영이가 좋아하는 랜덤 game start. Okay. So the first part is Korean.
It's so funny. The Korean is completely lost on me. I've heard this song a million times.
So the reason why they start with that thing is because everyone takes turns to initiate their favorite game. Because there are hundreds of these games.
Yeah.
And 채영이가 좋아하는 random game means like a random game that 채영 likes.
Okay.
채영 is Rosé's Korean name, I think.
Okay.
So that's how all Korean drinking games start.
Oh.
Because they take turns. And then that person who's in subject starts with a certain verse that would initiate a game.
Okay.
And 아파트 is the verse that would start the 아파트 game.
Okay. Oh, 아파트 is a game?
It's a game.
Oh, how's this game go?
You know, like the...
Wait. It's referring to the drinking game too, not just like an apartment?
Yeah, it's referring to the drinking game.
Okay, how does that game go? Is it the hand thing?
Yeah, this is the thing.
Oh, okay. I think I'm uniquely on the end of the spectrum where I don't know any of these cultural references.
Yeah.
Because even my daughter, really brief aside, this song is hugely popular with all of my kids, the three older ones.
Yeah.
They want to listen to it, sing to it nonstop.
Yeah.
Even my 5-year-old girl knows this move, and I didn't know what that was.
Oh, you don't?
And then even my 7-year-old girl was like, "Oh, you just stack hands, and then you put hands to the top."
Yeah.
Okay, so that is the drinking game.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she borrowed that choreo to actually perform the song.
Okay, got it. But maybe you could explain the game really quickly for our audience.
Okay, so you go 아파트, 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 and then everyone pile their hands in the middle. Like let's try.
Yeah.
And just randomly. Let's say like we have like 5 people here.
Yeah.
아파트, 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 and then we go like that.
Well, this
right?
is very coordinated.
Yeah, and then the person would say a random number. Let's say like 5.
Okay.
Right? And then I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Whoever gets 5 has to drink.
Oh, okay. Whoever's hands is at the top has to drink. Okay, got it.
But imagine there are like 10 people.
Yeah.
Like it's very randomized, so you don't know. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay. That is a fun game. I want to play it now.
But to be honest with you, it's one of the more dumb and not so fun games in my opinion.
Okay.
It's like so simple.
It also doesn't scale well, right? I feel like everyone has to... It can't be a huge group, and everyone has to be close enough to get their hands in the middle.
But that kind of like a little bit of sexual tension and stuff is very interesting because like
you're touching hands.
Yeah.
Even now, it's like you actually like touch hands.
Yeah.
Okay. And for our listeners only, maybe look it up or look at our YouTube to see how the game is played. Okay.
Yes.
Cool. But yeah, props to Rosé for creating a huge hit.
Yeah, I think now I start seeing all these collaborations between K-pop stars and American pop stars and how Korean culture is being infiltrated to American pop culture in general. I think it's very interesting.
How our soft power is growing.
Yeah. just up until yesterday, there was this very big music award festival called MAMA. It's called Mnet Asian Music Awards.
Oh, it's a Korean music award show.
Yeah, but they tried to claim it as Asian and include all the neighboring Asian nations as well. Like, for instance, they held it in Osaka this year, but they go around in major Asian countries to like sort of expand this culture of K-pop out to outside of Korea as well.
Korea's just following America's playbook for soft power.
Yes. And interestingly enough, because this song 아파트 was so popular, Bruno Mars and Rosé performed in this music awards.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which is kind of surreal for a Korean to see, like an American like pop culture icon to perform in a Korean music award.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Because all the obsession, let's say, for BTS, they wanted to either win or perform at all these American award ceremonies, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying now for a Korean to see, okay, one of the top pop stars in America, even willing to perform or headline an event in Korea feels surreal.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it feels very natural just because, again, Korea is definitely having its moment internationally. So yeah, of course, why wouldn't they? And maybe because I'm based in Korea now, but it's like, I mean, a lot of the global top pop stars are Korean. So it's almost, it doesn't feel that imbalanced is what I'm saying. It's like, yeah, Koreans are becoming more globally popular with these collaborations with Western artists. But I think it benefits the Western artists a lot too, to be closely aligned with and performing and collaborating with Korean artists. So
I think Bruno Mars like broke his personal record with this song.
Oh, wow.
Of like how many downloads there were on Spotify or something. So definitely both parties are getting some juice out of it.
Yeah. So yeah, Jun, this brings us to the next article. Korea tops soft power rankings from IMF.
Why does IMF
get
do
to rank
this?
these? I mean, like, that's true for a lot of things. Why does Michelin rank restaurants? I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
Because Michelin,
No, they're the tire company.
They're the tire company, but that's true. I don't know why. Because you travel with tires.
I honestly don't know the origins of this. But, for whatever reason, the IMF publishes a ranking of soft power, and Korea's at the top. Again, I don't know if it's like voter fatigue, we call it in the US, where this is the reason why maybe Michael Jordan or LeBron James didn't win more MVPs. You know, voters get tired of voting for the same person over and over.
Yeah.
And it's the sense like, okay, we know they're the greatest, like US in this case. We know US is the top soft power country in the world.
Yeah.
Let's give someone else a chance. So I don't know if it's that thing or not. But yeah, in this survey, they had ranked Korea as number 1.
But I do think it's more noticeable because I think US pop culture it's just the norm almost. You can't even say it's because it's just like it's so ambient. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. It's like everyone takes for granted.
Whereas like this new thing is very noticeable now because it's new. Yeah.
No, Korea is definitely having its moment. I think I wanted to get your perspective on this as a Korean. If there's anything more than we've already hashed, right? I would say as a Korean American, man, I mean, Korean Americans are super proud of this, right? It's incredibly validating for us. And yeah, anyway, just wanted to get your perspective as a Korean.
Yeah, definitely. I feel proud of the culture because especially growing up in like the 80s and 90s where all of the pop culture that you consume is either just very local or imported, right?
Yeah.
For a long time, I think it was Japan where like all the like the culture, especially for Korea because the proximity to Japan, like everything that is like soft power culture-ish comes from either Japan or there was like a Hong Kong era. Where like,
really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Like Hong Kong movies were so popular in Korea. But then to see this like, to see this being reversed and like to see people consuming Korean pop culture content is very surreal. I experienced this firsthand because I was in the US when Gangnam Style became a thing. And like it was so weird because that was like September, October-ish. Okay. August, September, October-ish.
The fact that you remember is crazy to me, but yeah.
Because I I remember going to all these Halloween parties, and every time you go to a thing, there's Gangnam Style. It was so weird because that song wasn't even like quote unquote targeted for the international audience. Like Psy didn't even know that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And so naturally the lyrics were all in Korean, right? And so I see all these people like following and singing this song in like their butchered Korean.
Yeah. hey, come on.
It was so weird and like proud and interesting in the same way. But now like seeing this becoming a norm, yeah, it's definitely Korea is having its moment.
It's having its moment, yeah.
This is the moment, the era in which like later on when I have kids, I would say like, do you know, in like 2020, people were like all listening to Korean songs and it was like, what?
So you don't think this will last?
I don't think so.
How do you feel about, how long it will last? And
I think we can have a good 10 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it relates back to the declining birth rate and stuff. Like Korea's like population is dwindling, and therefore I think economic power and influence is going to go down as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to last very long. I hope it will.
Yeah.
But it's going to be weird if this lasts forever.
I mean, if you look at, let's say, Japanese culture, feels like it lasts forever, right? At least in the US, there's still huge niches of people who, let's say, love anime or, I don't know, Japanese food has become a staple in international cuisine, right?
And Gwangju.
No, yeah. I mean, like, what do you... I agree with you in a sense.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring this up. I think most Koreans would agree with you in that this can't last forever. It's going to, wait for the other shoe to drop. It's going to end. The fairy tale Cinderella story of Korea is going to end. But I think my question is, like, why does it have to?
I once read this interesting article that whatever people express is the opposite of what they actually want to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Korean people saying that this is not going to last very long. I think the very underlying instinctual desire is that they want this to last longer.
Yeah. So they hope
they don't want to jinx it.
They don't want to jinx it, exactly. Yeah. Reverse jinx by saying it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll continue to succeed.
Yeah.
I think, one thing that I think is very interesting, the Korean wave or global exportation of Korean culture and soft power, known as Hallyu, it's very manufactured, right? I think in the 2000s-ish, the Korean government was like, hey, we are going to start this thing called Hallyu, and we're going to export Korean culture globally. Well, it paid off, right? But I think, for me, I found that very funny, that it was actually... It seemed like it was very manufactured by the Korean government and a very intentional thing that they did. I don't know, is that your understanding as a Korean too of this?
I don't think the government definitely played a part in it, but I think it's just an effort of many different factors coming from the private sector and the public sector. And like, it's a result of the collaboration. But like, if someone claims that the government just did this, then why wouldn't other governments do? Right?
Yeah, I mean, why don't other governments do this?
What I'm saying is that like the number one thing is the content itself
is good.
Was very appealing. Number two, of course, like the government helped with the exposure to like the global stage, definitely. And I also think that large conglomerates also played a part in this.
Okay.
I think CJ,
one of the Jebol conglomerates here.
had a lot to do with this.
Oh, why? Food, entertainment,
and all that in general. Yeah.
I mean, my perspective is like Netflix probably played as big a role as anything in exporting this Korean culture by making like Korean dramas and movies accessible.
Oh, dramas and movies, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, music, I think, has definitely, I would say Psy is what started it. I remember watching Gangnam Style in America and like, again, being like an American and just thinking it was kind of a weird thing. And then reading more about it and like, this is maybe in line with Psy's character and what he's known for, like just being over the top, kind of outlandish.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, for me, it was just like, it felt surreal. Like, why are people playing Korean song at weddings and celebrations and the clubs and everything?
Yeah. Worst wedding song.
No, but I will also say a part of me was like, it was proud for sure.
Yeah.
But again, it felt kind of cringe. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is such a random. Like, I don't want Koreans to be known for just over the top weird things, right? I want it to be more mainstream. And it felt like this. The popularity of this song was driven by just its crazy music video and just being really random and strange in a sense, right? So, from that perspective, I'd say I'm extra proud in the sense that it's just normal Korean culture now that's being exported, not just the really kind of weird, crazy things. Yeah. And it's similar to our discussion on sports, which is maybe, I didn't feel as proud when Yao Ming, let's say, was, an all-star and all these things because he was 7'6". It's like, hey, these are the only things that become successful or popular globally, kind of the outliers, but not the normal things. And so, yeah, I'd say that's what makes me extra proud nowadays versus, let's say, 10 years ago. Old Boy is another good example, June. Like, Old Boy was, again, pretty extreme plot, very, very dark. And it's like, oh, this is what's being popular globally because it is so extreme, right? But it's more of the normal everyday things that are, in Korean culture that are now becoming popular globally. Yeah, I think that's extra special.
Yeah, I think definitely Psy was an idiosyncrasy. But I think that's how all cultural exports work. Yeah, with like the very more pronounced aspects of a certain of the overall character of a culture first infiltrates to a foreign land, and then comes the normal things. Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah. But I think Psy also does represent an interest, like kind of a normal aspect of what Koreans are too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I thought most of my Korean friends told me, I thought in Korean, let's say, society, Psy's seen as a bit more, on the deep end, right? He's a bit more.
He is, but it does represent Korean humor, though.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a very good segue because speaking of like normal things, wanting to see more normal things making into the mainstream. When I see all this like soft power things being very influential in the global stage right now, but I feel like they're very, I'll just say it, more superficial stuff, like pop songs, like beauty and like plastic surgery and dramas and stuff, which is all good. But I feel like there's like a lot of other fundamental or less superficial cultural aspects to Korea as well. That's very interesting and substantial, which I want to be more exposed to the global stage as well, which I think made the Nobel Prize for Literature for this Korean writer very interesting and significant to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like literature.
Yeah. And you've said this too. You are hopeful and waiting for the day when a Korean architect could win the global architect competition.
Yes.
So yeah, I wanted to, a huge headline from the last 2 months was Han Kang. So not to be confused with Han Kang, which is the Han River.
Oh, it's the same.
It is the same
pronunciation.
Okay.
I think if it's her real name, her parents were being very intentional.
Okay, so I don't feel bad about confusing them. When I first saw the headline, I was like, wait, the Han River won something? But okay. Han Kang, the Korean writer, won the Nobel in literature, which we've mentioned on this pod before. But I wanted to talk a bit more about this since it was, again, probably one of the biggest headlines in Korea. June, I have a funny story.
Yeah.
It's not very long, though. I was in Starbucks. And I'm not exaggerating. I think this is the first time since moving here that I've actually observed someone sitting and reading at a Starbucks. I'm not joking. Yeah. There was someone
Koreans don't read.
reading a book in Starbucks, not on their laptops, not with the group talking, not on their phones, but reading a book, June.
Yeah.
I mean, I think reading books is very mainstream still in the US. I know a ton of people who do it. But yeah, I have not seen this in Korea. Again, I think this is the Han Kang effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, reading is going to have its day more in Korea, I think, because of her. You'd agree with me, though, right? People don't read.
Yeah, Korean people don't read in general.
Why do you think that is?
That's an interesting question.
For a country that is obsessed with education, I have my theories, but I want to know yours.
Why don't they read? I think the American reading population is privileged in that a lot of literature in the world in general are in English.
Oh, interesting. Not something I thought of, yeah.
Not a lot of it is in Korean, definitely not. I think that played a role.
But at least reading proficiency in English in Korea is very high. Wouldn't you agree? Or am I mistaken in that?
In Korea?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't think so.
Oh, really? But everyone has to prepare for the Sunung, which has a big English component.
But I mean, you having English skills enough to take the Sunung test doesn't mean that you're equipped to read English literature.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's actually surprising for me. So if you pick your average, let's say 20s to 40s Korean and give them an English book to read, they couldn't just like pretty natively read through and understand it?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I actually thought it was maybe higher. My read on this, Jun, read, is that actually if you think about reading, it's very low utility. Especially fiction. I mean, it's maybe no utility, right? In practical life, it's not going to help you make more money. It's like a leisure activity, right? And Koreans, as we've talked about, they don't have time for that. And well, June, you might ask, well, Daniel, what about nonfiction? That has a lot of utility. And I would say reading nonfiction is very inefficient. I think Koreans just want to know the key points, the practical aspects of it, get the 5 bullet points out, and not spend many days or hours reading through an entire nonfiction book too. So in general, I'd say it's just very low utility. And that's kind of why Koreans don't have the time for it or care as much about it.
I think so too. If you go to any Korean bookstore, the number one selling book is always not only nonfiction, but it's very like practical how-to books.
How-tos, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think overall, this is what we talked about. Even hobbies in Korea don't feel leisurely, feels competitive. In a country like Korea, if it doesn't have any core utility, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And again, Korea is also a country of extremes. So when Korea does want to rest or for leisure, they go all the way to
노래방s?
Or I was going to say there's retreats where you just sit and do nothing. Or they completely zone out. Or they sleep. This is my other interpretation of why I see Koreans sleeping everywhere. It's like, if I'm going to do nothing, I'm going to at least get some utility out of it, which is rest.
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting interpretation. Makes sense.
Okay, 2 more things related to the Han Kang. Jun, my aunt, actually, my gomo, she's been living in the U.S. for a long time now. I want to say 40, 50 years. But she's an artist as well. She was an art professor for a while. She's retired now. But yeah, I met up with her. She was in Korea last month. And we went to a museum together. And we were just talking about it and Han Kang and everything.
Yeah.
I thought her comments were very interesting to me. She kept repeating how surprised, of course proud, deeply proud of Han Kang, but surprised that Korea could produce this level of artistry and creativity. Because I think for her growing up, and I think this is true in modern Korea too, I'd love your take on this, the education system, society, everything, it's not necessarily conducive to creativity. Right? You might even say a lot of the creative artists, creative media, right? K-dramas, K-pop groups, etc. They're also very formulaic and manufactured, not really pushing the creative bounds. But so my aunt as an artist herself was just so, again, deeply proud, but also kind of surprised and astonished. And for her, I think if I were to put words in her mouth, just stepping back and looking at how far Korea's come as a country, where it can also create the creative aspect of this as well. Anyway, it was deeply meaningful for her, I could tell. So I don't know if you have thoughts on this as well, but
2 thoughts. I think number 1, creativity and artistry is a luxury as a society. As a economy develops, I think it's the most latter stage where creative aspects, cultural aspects, and artistic aspects start to bloom, right? Because it's not a necessity, right? Art and creativity. And that's why in this economical development stage in Korea, it's very natural that these kind of cultural, artistic, creative content is now flourishing. Number two, even for the American art scenes, I know as a fact that it was very manufactured and formulaic too in the beginning, because like America for a very long time had a deficit towards Europe, and how like they lack in this like
sophistication,
like creativity in the art scene. And I know that the American government was being very formulaic in trying to push the American art scene into the international world. And that's how like everything starts, I guess. And then once it becomes more mature, it like reproduces itself and becomes like a zeitgeist, if you will.
Wait, can you explain more about that? Because as an American, that's the first time I would have ever heard of that.
What?
American government being very formulaic and, let's say, calculative in exporting American culture outside of America.
Especially after World War II, I think America wanted to claim dominance in the art scene as well. And that's when like these artists like Andy Warhol, you might have heard of him.
I have heard of him. Yeah. Abstract, right?
Yeah. Or like pop art.
Yeah.
And then Jackson Pollock. He's like one of the most like active painting where you see like drizzles of paint everywhere.
Yeah.
Like those kind of artists, I think I know that were very intentionally promoted in the art scene
by the American government?
I don't know necessarily the government, but like institutions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. To claim, you know, like the mainstream dominance in the art scene, especially against Europe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, I would have always assumed, first of all, I would have never thought of this. It's like, of course, US culture is exported globally and seen as a leader in all these ways. But two, the idea that it was kind of manufactured or calculative or intentional would have never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
It would have always felt organic. So I think it's so interesting hearing, foreign perspective on American culture. And it's just being like pushed down your, exported and maybe even pushed down your throat.
Yeah.
And forced upon you almost too much. Interesting.
Yeah.
The final thing around this is, I have not read any of her books yet. I'm hoping to, and maybe we can do a media review of it in the future. But I'm going to have to read it in English.
Yes.
Right? And so I just wanted to bring up this idea of translation and the importance of it. I know when I read the English translation of her works, it won't be the same, right? It'll lose so much of the nuance, etc. At the same time, right, it's the best I can do. I don't know. I've told other people this in recent times too. Learning other languages won't be a necessity in the future. It'll just be a luxury, right? Because AI translation and everything will be good enough. Whereas, purely communicating will be, I think, basically taken for granted in the future. Every language can be translated into every other language. And again, all the meaning and importance and utility will still be there. But what will be lost, I think, is some of the nuance and cultural aspects of it. So just wanted to, get your thoughts on that. Like, well, first, have you read any of her books? If you do read them, are you going to read them in Korean versus English? And I don't know, what do you think is the value of maybe learning different languages in the future? Sorry, really quickly before you respond. Another reason that I bring this up is that I really hope my kids are all bilingual and are equally fluent in Korean and English. But a lot of times Korean people ask me, they're like, why? Why do you care? Right? To be honest, Americans say this as well. It's like if they know English, that's all that matters. But at least for me, I want them to be able to communicate natively in Korean. I don't know why, to be honest. I think language is such a part of culture and understanding, and also just seeing the world differently. I think language dictates thought in a lot of ways. So anyway, that's why I bring it up too.
Yeah.
Do you think there's value in knowing Korean moving forward, let's say 10, 20 years from now, compared to English especially? I wanted to get your thoughts on this overall.
Most definitely yes. Because I think understanding a language opens up a whole new universe of like a thought process and the way that you perceive the world and everything. Like, for instance, if you consider me as being bilingual, like the English speaking me and the Korean speaking me have very different personas. And I think that's very interesting because you like sort of go into a different mode of understanding the world. And I mean, like human perception in general is very tied to language, right? So I think you understanding a different syntax, different vocabulary, different like cultures that are like infused in a language is very interesting. And the reason why I think maybe if some Koreans like say like, why do you want your kids to learn Korean is coming from, again, that very utilitarian aspect of Koreans. But I think they are neglecting the part. I think for me, the number one advantage that I have by having the ability to understand and speak English is not the utilitarian aspect at all. The number one thing by far is that I can understand the world differently, and I have this another universe that I can think in. And so I really respect people who are like multilingual, right?
Yeah.
Like if I were to speak French, for instance, I would have another like third universe in my world that I can understand things.
Yeah.
Not only culturally, but just like that influence that comes from having to understand a different language. So I think of course, it's so valuable to know another language, and especially for your kids if they have like Korean roots. Knowing Korean I think it's very valuable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have not read Han Kang's book.
Are you planning to?
Not in the near future. But one thing
why? Yeah, it's very popular in Korea.
I have like a sort of an underdog mentality where I don't want to, because I'm like, what was I, Enneagram type 4?
Yeah,
I want to be
3. You're Enneagram 3.
I want to be unique in that. Okay. I don't want to follow everyone. Anyways, interestingly enough,
you're countercultural, and it's so popular and in vogue now to be reading her.
Yeah.
You want to wait maybe till the hype has died down.
Yes.
You don't want to be a sheep.
Interestingly enough, she has relations with Gwangju. I think she was born there.
Oh, okay.
So when I went there, like I saw like all these
Han Kang like advertising.
Yeah, congratulations Han Kang, like the daughter of Gwangju or whatever.
Wow, daughter of Gwangju.
And one of her, I think, important works is around. I don't know if you like Gwangju is very famous for like their democratic movement in the 1980.
I know it's the Gwangju uprising is one of the topics covered in her works. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
I see. Does she? Anyway, I know some of her stuff is just poetry. Not
is
just
it?
Poetry. I don't mean, but it's purely poetry.
I didn't know.
But I don't know if all of her stuff is poetry or if it's more traditional like works.
I didn't even know that she had poetry.
Oh yeah. I think that's what my aunt talked a lot about her poetry, and in particular, she thought that would be very difficult to translate. But my aunt being very bilingual, I think she's going to read both the English and Korean. I'm going to ask her how she thinks they compare.
Interesting.
Yeah. Jun, I've never honestly thought about till now why I actually even care about my kids being bilingual, even though I'm asked that, and I seem to be putting a big emphasis on it by even living here. I really never thought about it. I think growing up, I always felt like I was missing a big part of my identity by not knowing Korean, right? Not being able to communicate, with other Koreans. But that's very utilitarian and on the surface. It's things like my mom wrote some autobiography through her church, and some year-long workshop thing, and she has a book about her life, but it's in Korean. I want to be able to maybe read that natively and understand it, very at a different level rather than just translating the whole thing through some AI translation tool. But yeah, I always felt like, for me too, it wasn't the utility of it, because I can watch K-dramas and see the subtitles just fine. I think for me, it's really tied to identity and wanting to feel more fully Korean, and always feeling like I'm not, like you maybe like you said, accessing that part of myself that I feel like I should have access to. So
in that sense, what I sort of worry about AI being like this translator that can be always like super accessible, whatever, like in one of Meta's like tech conference, they they demonstrated like this AR glass thing where it would like auto translate your language to someone else. I think I saw like Mark Zuckerberg doing that.
Yeah.
That the thing that worries me, maybe it's like a stepping stone towards like actually making humans understand all language inherently in their brains, but like in that phase where utility wise you don't necessarily have to learn another language. I think it chips away a lot of things that are good about actually having to learn a language and understand a language. Yeah.
I mean, I firmly believe in the near future, you won't, all the translation services will be so good and fast and accessible that, you can travel anywhere, communicate with any other person, not seamlessly, but functionally you'll be able to communicate with other people.
Yeah.
And I personally think that's a great thing for the world. Yeah, I can understand your sentiments in that maybe this will keep people away from learning more language. I think language acquisition will be more seen as a hobby and a passion then, and not a necessity. I don't know. I personally could see that as a good thing. You can choose to pursue language acquisition.
But there are a lot of words in languages that cannot translate the subtle nuance of it ever.
Yeah. Definitely agree with that. And I guess like, I don't think there's anyone who's going to not go into language learning for those reasons of understanding the deep cultural nuances and things of different languages. If they're interested in that, even in a post, AI translation everything world, I think they'll still get into it. And AI translation will be for, when I'm traveling or just communicating in like non-homogenous societies like America more easily. I think maybe I'm a tech optimist. I see all the good that will come of it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it'll necessarily stop some of the other things from happening.
I see.
Oh, recently I went to one of my alumni gatherings. Actually, the only one I've ever been to.
In Korea?
In Korea. But it was to launch the Korean language school at my alma mater. So actually, there were, I think, 8 other languages, Japanese, Chinese, Russian, etc., Spanish. And now Korean's being added to that list. And June, I learned Korean is the only language in the US that's growing as far as new learners of that language.
Oh.
So it's a very low base, but I think Korean language acquisition in the US is increasing by 50% year over year right now.
Oh, wow.
So small base to begin with, but it is the only language that's growing. Every other language is in decline in the US. So again, another example of Korea's soft power and I think people's interest in learning Korean. I think that's cool. Yeah. Anyway, that's a wrap for our, October, November headlines. Hopefully you found this interesting.
Yes.
I know I did.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay, so as always, if you want to support our podcast, consider supporting us on Patreon. Just for the low cost of $1 a month, you can become a Patreon supporter, get access to our exclusive Discord, where you can discuss episodes, give us feedback, propose future topics with other subscribers. Since last recording, we have 2 new patrons. First, DDHH. Thank you, DDHH.
Thank you, DDHH.
And second, thank you, Alejandro. Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Why? Is this an example of me?
I don't know. Yeah, I was going to
saying it
pronounce
in
it
the
that way if I would have read his name.
But yeah, thank you for your support as always. It goes a long way to keeping the lights on and also keeping us motivated to keep doing this weekly. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that's a wrap. Thanks, June, for informing me.
No, I love the news. I love the news episodes.
You do?
Yeah, news and then the trends episodes.
I like the trends one the most. More. I like the comments written.
I guess I like every episodes that are more structured.
I like this because I feel like I always learn a lot. Yeah. But okay.
All right.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but there's a word. What's going on today?